Canyon de Chelly National Monument is a very unique protected area in northwestern Arizona, not far from the New Mexico border. Its boundaries lie entirely within the Navajo Nation, the largest Indian reservation in the country, and it's jointly administered between them and the National Park Service. Within the 83,840-acre park, you can find three major canyons, including Del Muerto Canyon, Monument Canyon, and the namesake of the park, de Chelly Canyon. These canyons were carved by streams that begin in the Chusca Mountains, located just east of the park, primarily in New Mexico. Something fascinating about this area is it is one of the largest continuously inhabited landscapes in North America. To this day, you'll see small homes and farms down at the bottom of these canyons, as well as cliff dwellings and other ruins left behind by indigenous tribes. Our visit to Canyon de Chelly National Monument was a last-minute addition to the road trip, as we were coincidentally driving right by it since it was in between Monument Valley and our next stop, Petrified Forest National Park. We figured that because there was no way Monument Valley would be occupying the entire day, we could pair both of these together and keep ourselves busy on the way to Petrified Forest. And I'm glad we made the call to stop on by because this is a great national monument. You won't find any big hikes here, but there is a long list of viewpoints accessed by short trails that look into all three canyons found within the park. We began along South Rim Drive, where there's two small overlooks pretty early on. We chose to make our first at Tseyi Overlook, which wasn't much of an exciting first impression. I really think you've got to gain some elevation here to really take in the expansiveness of the canyons. This one simply isn't that high, and the dried up river was pretty unattractive. In my opinion, a better first overlook would have been the one looking out at the Sliding House. This showcases a tiny little bit of ruins at the bottom, but more importantly, the canyon is far more impressive from this viewpoint. The cliff walls are far taller and steeper, plus the yellow fall colors affecting the trees down at the bottom was a great touch. My favorite view was when you face back in the direction you came from, as the canyon snakes its way around ridges. I enjoyed this spot a lot, and it was the first time I felt like coming here could end up being very worth it for us. Heading further east, the two best overlooks on the south rim are pretty close by to one another. Face Rock Overlook is basically just a pull off on the side of the road, but it's absolutely awesome. The canyon views speak for itself, but one of my other favorite features were these small holes you could look into. These highlight four separate cliff dwellings or ruins, all of which are noticeably more substantial than Sliding House. It's still far from the most impressive dwellings in the park, we'll get to that later, but it's still really cool and probably the best examples in the de Chelly Canyon specifically. We took our time taking in this view for a little longer before heading on to my most anticipated overlook in the park at Spider Rock. This is the most well-known part of the entire national monument, and there's a short trail along a ridge which you can walk along to access a handful of exceptional viewpoints. I was very impressed when I first saw Spider Rock, and it's by far the most amazing place to visit at Canyon de Chelly. The massive sandstone spire rises 830 feet from the canyon floor, and because of how sudden it is, it's honestly super imposing. That's not even to mention the awesome views looking out into two canyons, de Chelly to the back and the start of Monument Canyon to the right. Also, if you continue a little further along the trail, there's another pretty spectacular view facing the other direction. Both sides were definitely very beautiful, but facing Spider Rock is one of my favorite views in all of Arizona. From here, it took us about a half hour to drive between the far end of the south rim to our next overlook at the north rim of Del Muerto Canyon. For us, this was the Antelope House Overlook, which is another beautiful spot with a trail leading to a handful of viewpoints. There's a lot of space to walk around and take in the scenery, and like several other locations in the park, you'll have the ability to look in either direction. The canyon walls were also quite impressive, with the section on the left literally going past vertical. Facing west, or to your right-hand side, the canyon winds its way around a couple ridges with more yellow fall colors. Plus, if I zoom in towards the bottom, you can see Antelope House itself, which is a considerably large portion of ruins that may have been the most impressive in the entire park. If not this, definitely the next few examples that our final two overlooks were. Massacre Cave Overlook is the furthest east viewpoint in the park, but is located right by our final spot in the park. It gets its name because of these ruins inside this outcropping right along one of the canyon walls. This is a true example of a cliff dwelling, and I thought it looked really awesome. Once again, the view also complements this so well, it's probably the highest elevation of all the overlooks in the park. It got surprisingly lush at the canyon floor, but it makes sense because it's closest to the nearby mountains I referenced earlier. It's absolutely a stunning spot, and this was definitely worth our time. Mummy Cave Overlook was our last destination for the day, and this provides similarly great scenery of Del Muerto Canyon. It must have been the most lush portion we saw as well. And then to top it all off, our last time seeing cliff dwellings was one of the best examples with a super cool location inside of this small crevice. Overall, I was surprised by how captivated I was by the cliff dwellings here. I couldn't imagine one of those giant displays you'd see at Mesa Verde National Park in Colorado. We actually would have visited that park this trip, but they stopped doing tours of their own cliff dwellings at the end of October. Still, I really look forward to checking it out at a future date, and I thought Canyon de Chelly National Monument was a great appetizer. Most impressive about the park for me were definitely the canyons. I mean, once you got up high, the views were very beautiful. So if you're passing on through the area, I'd absolutely recommend a visit here. I wouldn't go far out of the way to come, but it's perfect if you're heading to Petrified Forest from the north like we were. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate if you could give it a like and subscribe to Travel Dash for more content like this in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye guys.